Scott is 31 years old. He earns $62,000 a year. He's read 3 personal finance books. He knows what compound interest is. He understands that credit card debt at 24% APR is mathematically destroying him. He knows he should be investing for beginners level stuff, index funds, Roth IRA, automatic transfers. He knows all of it. And he has saved exactly $900 in the last 2 years. Scott isn't lazy. He isn't stupid. He isn't irresponsible. His brain is just running software that was never designed for wealth building. And until he understands what that software actually does and how to override it, the knowledge doesn't matter. He'll keep reading the books and staying broke. This is his story. And if you're being honest with yourself, it might be yours too. Scott grew up in a house where money was tight, not dramatic poverty, just tight. The kind of tight where you learn, very young, that money is something that leaves. It arrives on payday and it leaves. On bills, on food, on the gap between what things cost and what you earn. Money is temporary. Spending is normal. Saving feels abstract because saved money never stayed long enough to feel real. He didn't learn this from a lesson. He learned it from watching, from the emotional weight in the room when a bill arrived, from the way his parents' posture changed on the first of the month. Children don't learn financial literacy for beginners from textbooks. They absorb it from the environment around them. And what most American households teach, without meaning to, is that money is for surviving, not building. By the time Scott got his first real paycheck at 23, his brain already had a money script running. Earn, spend, repeat. The script wasn't conscious. It wasn't a decision. It was a deeply grooved neural pathway that felt like normal. Here's what the neuroscience actually says about this. A 2018 study published in Nature Human Behavior found that financial decision-making is heavily influenced by what researchers call present bias, the tendency for the brain to massively overvalue immediate rewards over future ones. When Scott sees his paycheck, his brain's reward system lights up for things it can have now. The index fund that will compound for 30 years produces almost no dopamine response compared to the dinner out, the new shoes, the streaming upgrade that delivers pleasure today. This isn't a character flaw. It's how human brains evolved over hundreds of thousands of years when storing resources for the future was far less important than surviving today. The brain that kept our ancestors alive is now working against our financial freedom in the modern economy. And it gets worse. A study from the University of Cambridge found that financial stress itself impairs the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain responsible for long-term planning and rational decision-making. Meaning the more financially stressed you are, the harder it becomes neurologically to make good financial decisions. The system is self-reinforcing. Stress causes poor decisions. Poor decisions cause more stress. The brain locks itself into a cycle that feels impossible to break from the inside. Scott knows this cycle intimately. He doesn't recognize it as neuroscience. He calls it being bad with money. Drop in the comments, does Scott's story sound familiar? Because the research suggests most people are running some version of this same script without knowing it. There are 4 specific brain mechanisms keeping Scott and most people financially stuck, and each one has a concrete override. The first is present bias, which we just covered. The override is removing the decision entirely. Scott doesn't trust himself to manually transfer money to savings every month because his brain will find a reason not to. The fix is automation. Setting up an automatic investment transfer that fires on payday before his brain ever categorizes the money as available to spend. You can't choose immediate gratification over future wealth if the future wealth money never appears in the account your spending brain monitors. This is the single highest leverage personal finance tip that separates people who build wealth from people who intend to. The second mechanism is loss aversion. Behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman's research established that humans feel the pain of losing something approximately twice as intensely as the pleasure of gaining the same thing. For Scott, this means potential investment losses feel psychologically catastrophic, even when the historical data on long-term index fund investing is overwhelmingly positive. His brain treats market volatility as a threat to survival, so he keeps money in a savings account earning next to nothing because the stable number feels safer than a growing number that might temporarily dip. The override here is reframing the time horizon. Scott's brain is evaluating a 30-year investment on a 30-day emotional timeline. The S&P 500 has never produced a negative return over any 20-year period in its history. When Scott understands he's not investing for this month, he's investing for the version of himself at 60, the loss aversion calculus changes. The risk isn't losing money. The risk is staying in the savings account and losing to inflation for 30 years while watching compound interest work for everyone else. The third mechanism is social comparison. Research from the Journal of Consumer Research consistently shows that humans calibrate their spending not to their actual financial goals but to the visible consumption of people around them. Scott's coworker got a new car. His friend just posted vacation photos. His brain interprets these signals as social pressure spend at the level of your peers or signal lower status. And lower status, to an evolutionary brain, feels like a genuine threat. This mechanism is why lifestyle creep is so automatic and so universal. It's not vanity, it's ancient tribal wiring being exploited by a consumer economy that profits from it. The override is consciously choosing a comparison group. Scott can't eliminate social comparison, his brain won't allow it. But he can deliberately expose himself to stories of people who built wealth quietly, who drove older cars and took fewer vacations and arrived at 50 with genuine financial independence. Who you compare yourself to determines what feels normal. Change the reference group, change the behavior. The fourth mechanism is identity, and this one is the deepest. Scott doesn't consciously think of himself as someone who is bad with money, but somewhere in his operating system is an identity belief, a sense that wealth building is for other kinds of people. People who grew up differently, people with certain advantages, people who are just wired for it. Research on behavior change consistently shows that identity is the most powerful driver of long-term behavior. People don't sustain actions that conflict with who they believe they are. Scott can learn every personal finance strategy available: how to save money, how to budget, wealth-building fundamentals, financial independence frameworks, and none of it will stick if his underlying identity says those strategies aren't for someone like him. The override isn't positive thinking. It's evidence accumulation. Every time Scott automates a transfer and leaves it alone, he has evidence that he's someone who invests. Every time he runs the real cost of a debt before signing, he has evidence that he thinks long-term. Every small financial decision that aligns with who he wants to be adds a data point to a new identity. The new neural pathway doesn't form from reading about wealth mindset. It forms from acting in alignment with it, repeatedly, until the acting becomes the identity. Here's where Scott is now. He automated $200 a month into an index fund 6 months ago. He hasn't touched it. He doesn't check it daily because daily checking activates loss aversion, and he knows that now. He's running the same income, same expenses, same life. The difference is, he understands what his brain has been doing, and he's stopped cooperating with the mechanisms that were keeping him stuck. $200 a month. At 10% average annual return over 30 years, that's $450,000. From the money his brain used to spend before he even noticed it was gone. Your brain was built for a world that no longer exists. It was built to consume immediately, avoid loss, follow the tribe, and stay in the identity it knows. None of those instincts are wrong. They kept humans alive for 300,000 years. They're just catastrophically misaligned with building wealth in the modern economy. The rewire isn't willpower. It's systems that make the right financial behavior automatic, knowledge that reframes the time horizon, deliberate choice of who you compare yourself to, and consistent small actions that build a new financial identity, one decision at a time. Scott figured this out at 31. The earlier you see the software, the longer compound interest has to run in your favor. If this one landed, subscribe. Every week, Scott Finance gets into the specific mechanisms behind why smart people stay financially stuck and exactly what changes when you understand the system you're operating inside. Hit the button.